Welcome to the Driven to Succeed Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Olson. Today I have a special guest, Holly Zimmermann, National Realty Guild. Holly, we've done a few transactions
We
over
have.
the years,
Yep.
and just had two back to back this last in December and January,
Yep.
so just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm very happy to have you on because you do a ton of business, and the biggest part that I like when I'm dealing with you is your professionalism, number one.
Thank
So
you.
you don't always get that because sometimes these deals are challenging and you have to, roll with them, but you've been always such a consummate professional and handle things the right way. It's been pretty awesome.
Thank you. And I
So,
could say the same about you. And, as you, I'm sure, can attest, there's challenges all the time. And you get to a certain point where you're just, how do we get this deal done? Or, how can we overcome whatever challenge that we're facing? You know,
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
too old and don't have the patience
Right.
to, you know, kind of dilly dally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, there's typically always a solution. I mean, there's some things that can never get through if somebody loses a job or
Of
something.
course.
But for the
Of
most
course.
part, it's just being able to have that professionalism
Yeah.
on all sides of the table is awesome.
Well, and I
Right?
think everybody, has the same goal, whether I represent a buyer or a seller, we want the deal to get done.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm always up for any suggestions on how we can do that.
Yes. For sure.
Yeah.
So, Holly, with your background, so when you graduated
Hmm.
college, right?
Yep,
You got a full scholarship for tennis,
I did.
right?
Yes,
How
I'm a
awesome is that?
Division 1 athlete. So
Yes.
it was amazing. I was very fortunate, but I will say that I put the work in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in being competitive and with that being said, naturally I am a competitive person regardless
Right.
of whether I'm playing sports or coaching sports or, in my professional,
Right.
career
Right.
with real
It
estate.
translates over
Yeah,
all the
definitely.
way
Yeah.
across, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started working for in mortgage,
I did.
actually, Wells Fargo,
I
right?
did. I did. And I actually got sick of the cold weather. So I put a request to be transferred to Scottsdale, Arizona. So I packed my Saturn at the time. I was 23
Yeah.
and they don't even make Saturns
Right.
anymore. And I transferred with Wells, and I had a great experience in the mortgage lending side. I did
Yeah.
subprime, and which is
Right.
no longer anymore
Right.
prime,
Right.
prime.
Right.
And so it was a great experience at Wells. Then I went over to JP Morgan Chase,
Sure.
and I just thought, you know what, if I'm doing all of these deals for other real estate agents, why don't I tap into that business and
Right.
see, if I enjoy it. And I mean, it was a game changer for me. It is, I am so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so I've been an agent for 15 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how long were you in mortgage then?
7.
7.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I don't
So
know.
that's
I don't
yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
age me.
didn't mean to do that. But but I mean 7 years of mortgage gives you a ton of experience.
Yeah.
And specifically if you're a big company like Wells and
Yeah.
JP Morgan, I mean you're probably doing volume,
Volume.
right? Right? Because
Yes.
a lot of times some of those leads are just coming to you, right?
Correct.
From
From
internally Wells
exactly.
Fargo customers, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So that's, as I train people, because I've trained, I've brought people in to do mortgage and
Yeah.
junior loan officers and I train them from scratch,
Sure.
never being anywhere else, right?
Right.
I kind of like to do that because then I can do it my way,
Of
how
course.
I've done it. And like
The
I
right way, of course.
literally built
The right
yes,
way.
right, the right way. Literally built a tech company around how to train people in on to do it. Um, but at the same time, I have to train them how to go get business,
Yeah.
right? And and it's tough. The burnout is real,
It
right?
is.
Because if you're a new loan officer and you don't have this book of beer, I mean, there's only
There.
so many grandma, grandpas, cousins that you can try to get financed on a home, right?
Yep, yep. No, you know what, and you're absolutely right. Whether it is on the lending side, and you're starting from scratch, or on the real estate side,
Right,
it is a grind for
right,
sure. And I feel that when I was a loan officer, it really did give me kind of a platform on understanding the business and translating that over to the real estate side, which has
Yeah.
been a huge benefit. So when I spoke to loan officers, I knew exactly the process that, all the buyers are, were at.
And that's such a advantage, because I deal with so many real estate agents that whether they're new or, newer, I should
Yeah,
say, and they just don't have that that ability to see what we do on our side,
right.
right? And
Or
understand
understand it.
understand
Yeah.
how it works on
Yeah.
our side.
Yep.
And, even simple things like escrow and like, name it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
No, it was a game changer because like I said, especially, dealing with subprime lending and prime.
right.
And
You've seen everything on
yeah,
that side,
I've seen no doc. I did so many no
right?
doc loans back
Right.
in the day. So,
Sure.
there was a lot, but it, like I said, it gave me such a great base of knowledge
Right.
to understand, as an agent, kind of where the loan was at.
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, I just appreciate that so much because it just when everybody's working together to
Hmm.
get a file done, and it's you got to be careful when you specifically you're the selling agent or even the buyer's agent and
Right.
something on my side pops up, because guess what? I mean, things happen, right?
Exactly. This stuff is
And
out of your
you're
control.
just right. So, and I've always trained people like my guys is like, hey, if something comes up, number one, let's find a solution before we talk to anybody,
Correct.
right? So
Right.
that when you do talk to people, you can say, hey,
You have an option.
we have a solution. Here's what it's going to take to do it. And here's what we need everybody to do, right?
Yep.
And because I learned early on, I had like I think I was in the business for what, like 4 months. And on a weekend I had a file come in, and so I had calculated their income wrong with their overtime.
Uh-huh.
I was only 4 months in, right? And we were at 52 DTI.
Oh,
And can't go over
yeah, you can't go over
50, right?
50.
Not unconventional,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
And um, and I just freaked out and I made a
Yep.
call.
Well, you
And
panic,
you're right.
especially when you're
I
new.
called the
Yep.
buyers and like, hey, we got an issue. And then all of a sudden the agent calls me, just lights me up,
Of
right?
course.
And it's just like, oh my God, and I felt so bad. So that's when I really learned, like, that
Yep.
was my first, hold on,
Yep.
because we did find a solution,
Of
but
course.
that now from here on out,
Find a
I
solution
was,
prior to
yeah,
delivering any sort of news.
news,
Yep.
any sort of
Yep.
news, right?
Yep.
So,
And I think we've all been there.
yeah,
I can't, that is umpteen times. And, even when I was new in real estate, I
yep,
made mistakes. And you really, I think that you can agree to this, that you don't really learn until you,
100%, you go through it,
make
right?
some of those,
Make some of those hard mistakes,
mistakes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
So,
as long as you learn from them, you don't make the same mistake
exactly.
twice.
Yeah. No,
It is what it
really
is.
takes one lighting up from a
Right.
from an agent or a buyer where you learn real fast.
Or a broker
Or a
or
broker,
something,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And when you're new, and that's why it's so it's this industry is, I mean, whether it's mortgage or real estate, is not easy,
No.
right? And the whole thing with the buyer's agents now, like that whole lawsuit and everything going,
Yes.
like, and I still look at it this way. I'm like, okay, you guys want to get rid of buyer's agents or you want to negotiate that. I get it. And that should be negotiable. It's always negotiable, right?
Of course.
Many people just didn't know that or whatever reason. But if you really take out a lot of that stuff and you start, people don't realize what it is to do a transaction,
No.
you know?
No. They really don't. And it's funny because I think there's a misconception like, oh, you just go show houses and you sell them and
Right.
no big deal and collect, a commission and there's so many layers
Right.
of knowledge
Eh,
and hoops and I's have to be dotted and T's and are crossed
yeah.
and so there's a lot more that goes into it and on the obviously on the lending side
Oh, for
as
sure.
well. um
It's, and I think me personally, in the last like 2 years, we've seen how many transactions, no inspection, right?
right.
And then how many problems after inspection.
Correct.
I mean, attorneys have like started getting so much business right
They've got a
now,
ton.
right? And
Yeah.
then like, well, you signed that you weren't going to do an
And
inspection, right?
exactly.
and it's so it's bringing a lot of that to the
Hmm.
forefront, right?
Yes.
So you can hear some of these talking heads on TV say this and that, but until you actually are in it and working on homes that might be built in the 1920s,
20s.
right?
Yep.
And like we had one, my client was going to put an offer and still had the screw in fuses,
Uh,
right? So, and they're like questioning me. I'm like, well, I mean, it's not up to
yes.
code, obviously, but is it, is it functioning? Is it working? Is it,
Right.
like, can we get
Is
past
this
this?
going to
And
be a
like,
deal killer? Right.
right,
Right. Right.
and getting everybody on the same page. And that's where, I really do value agents with knowledge. And, even if they're newer agents, if they're willing to learn and, and
Absolutely.
have the teams. And that's what some of these big teams are doing now too,
Yeah.
and having all
And, and
Yep.
I'm in full support of that, because like I said, you really don't know what you're getting in. Well, I don't want to say you don't know. You can have all the training in the world, which is great. But when you really get your hands, I don't want to say dirty, so to speak, but when you're
Right.
really in a transaction, um, I just had one that had a cracked sewer pipe. I
Yes.
mean, I mean, you name it.
All right.
I had a situation where there was an inspection that was waived, and it was dead of winter, and there was a in-ground pool that my seller, who
Right.
had no idea, had
Right.
rehabbed the house, but you have 4 feet of snow. So, I mean, you deal with
Right.
situations like, am I in the twilight zone?
Right.
But you learn from them real fast
Sure.
to,
Sure.
maybe take an extra step at
Right.
doing a little bit more research or whatever the case may be. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or, the biggest thing is just knowing where to go to get the answers.
exactly.
That's the real like trick. And,
Yeah,
I've fortunately worked for a couple of great mortgage companies. So we have everything at our fingertips, right?
absolutely.
And we know how to get to them and so forth. And people always working, like on our side,
Hmm.
if something ever comes up and it's like, hey, we all want this transaction to work, right?
Yep.
So there's not, everything we need to do is,
Kind of.
we have to follow the guidelines, and
Yep.
that's one of the biggest things that's kind of a pet peeve for me, because you'll have an agent that'll say, well, this doesn't make any sense. I'm like, tell me about it.
eh,
Fannie Mae says
right.
we have to do it
I
this way. There's no selling it to Fannie Mae if it's not done this
a
way.
hundred
Like,
percent.
it doesn't, not, you can argue with me all day.
Right.
We can't close
Absolutely.
if it's not a Fannie Mae approved,
Absolutely.
condition. So it's just interesting, and when people really get it and they get out of the emotion, because, like trying to keep that even keel when
Yeah.
emotions are high, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, commissions,
Yes.
everything else, right?
Oh,
Is
absolutely. Well, and I think that, if you have a good temperament and you're, source of knowledge, you become, kind of on the outside where you're more of a not a problem solver, but like, okay, here's what I have to follow. Here's kind of the situation, and how do I translate that, either with a solution or with another option.
right, 100%.
So
And making, and being able to explain that to your buyers or sellers
yes,
or,
absolutely.
whoever's in that, again, it's just emotional.
Well, and yeah,
Mm.
because you're right. There's hundreds of thousands of
Right,
dollars, and there's a
right.
lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to
Yes.
speak.
So speaking about your knowledge in your business, and how you've grown your business,
Mhm.
like you do more listings now than you do buyers,
Yeah.
right? So you've built that investor kind of portfolio type of. In
Yes,
fact, when a lot of people struggled last year, myself included, I know many, many, many people, you did what, 124 transactions and over $20 million in 2023.
I did.
That's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Uh, I mean that's amazing. That really is. I mean, it's, a lot of people. I mean, I think I just read the other day that over 1,000 real estate licenses were not renewed
Sure.
in Minnesota,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So a lot of people are just getting out of it. Maybe some got into it recently and thought, okay, this is gonna be easy money, and then it
Right.
found out
It's
it's not,
actually work,
right?
you know?
Right.
Yeah, no, I said, a few years ago, that I really wanted to do a lot more volume. Obviously a lot more volume is a lot more work, which is fine. I'm not foreign to hard
Right.
work. And so I said, okay, you know what? How can I hit 20 million because that was my goal. It's my goal every year. And fortunately I hit it, but there was a lot of hard work. And how I did it was I thought, okay, you know how they have events and boats and you can meet investors. So I'm like, okay, where is the money trail?
Right.
As opposed to you know, marketing myself to, residential neighborhoods, which
Right.
which I do, and I love working with that type of niche in the market. However, I really wanted a high, fast-paced volume. I can't
Mhm.
play competitive sports anymore. So I figured, what's the next
Right.
adrenaline? And so I actually looked up, the companies that have the most investors.
Hmm.
Homestead Road is one of them, Minnesota Home Guys, Minnesota Nice. And I called them and said, hey, you know what? I'm Holly Zimmerman. This is what I have to offer. Do you have any investors that would be interested, essentially in giving me a shot?
Right.
And I made a lot of phone calls. And one thing that I can suggest to any agents or new or experienced is if you have a listing, calling some of these companies that have hundreds of investors and saying, hey, I've got a listing coming up. It's off market at the moment. Do you have an investor that would want to purchase it wholesale?
Right.
Because they'll pay you out the same. And most of the time. They will, I always say, segue back to, an agent that offers them,
Right.
whether it's a rehab or they, hold on to it. So that's essentially how I got my foot in the door. I think I called enough and knocked on enough doors that they're like, give this agent like a shot,
Right.
like get her off
Right.
her back.
Right.
And so I told this investor, all right, you gave me 5 houses in January last year.
Mhm.
And I'm going to sell them this weekend, and I'm going to sell them for over list price.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's a
Hey,
lofty,
you're putting
that's a
that.
lofty, promise. But I'm like, you know what? Sink or swim, man.
Right.
Like it's go time.
Right.
And fortunately, I sold all five, for over 20.
Holy cow.
So, which was huge,
Right.
and yeah, the rates, were a little bit more in the buyer's favor then,
Right.
which helped me. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, it gave me the opportunity, this investor gave me the opportunity, like, okay, you got a shot. Here, what are you going to do? You got to come through in a clutch and perform,
Right.
which I was ready to.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I started and how I would recommend other agents, that are interested in getting kind of in that niche market.
Yeah, I mean, that is such great advice because there are so many people that are just struggling and just calling their sphere, looking for these leads,
Yeah.
thinking outside of the box to go get that business, right? And I mean, I've had I don't know if you know Mike Mitchell. He's from Robbinsdale, has Mitchell Realty,
Yeah.
and he does a ton of commercial and real estate. He's
Yes.
flipped over 160 homes. He was on my podcast couple months ago,
Yeah.
and you had mentioned you picked up the phone and you dialed,
Yeah.
right? And that's literally, like his like through and through.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about like meeting mailmen,
A
you
hundred
see them
percent.
and like, hey, if you see anything where everything's, call me, right?
Yes.
And you give
And
it a
it's
little,
just a
you know,
different avenue,
yeah, it's
you
just
know.
finding that different way to get
Absolutely.
that business to be successful. And
Absolutely.
like, in in the mortgage world, I struggle with it, just picking up the phone and calling, right? And it can be so fruitful just to do it. And every time I do it, I block off that time
Right.
and I just do it at the end of the hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm like, well, holy cow, I have these people are going to be buying in the spring. These people are probably this summer. This one wants a HELOC.
You
Like,
have
out of
leads,
20
right?
calls, you usually get 3, 4, or 5 people that are
Ab
ready to do something in a year or two. So
Yep.
you just know now you got to put them on that list, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just funny because there's so, I do coaching and there's so many people that, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I was one of them, right? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do
Right.
it. And then I always found an excuse not to.
Of course. Because it's tedious.
Right. Right.
But the results, are, like you said, very fruitful or can be.
Right.
And then you start building kind of a pipeline and,
Hmm.
you go on the list. So,
Yeah. So even when it's a tough market,
yeah.
you can become very successful like you did. I mean that I seen some of my bigger teams that I work with that would do 160 transactions
Mhm.
and and they did quarter of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know,
Well, it's a tough market, and like I said,
right.
maybe I was lucky, maybe I wasn't, but I worked really hard at establishing, and once, like I said, you kind of get your foot in the door,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you can attest to this, that real estate is such a everybody and their mother is a real estate agent. However, the really successful agents you
Right.
see over and
Where
over
the
and
most
over.
of the
It's a very small pool, and on the investor side, there's hundreds of investors, but there's a small pool that know each other,
right,
and so then you can get referrals. Like,
right,
hey, she just sold five, you know, uh,
right.
uh, over list price, and in the
Hey,
dead cold January, stone cold January. So
right.
she might be, a good agent for this property or whatever. So
Hmm.
that's really, how I got started and how I would really recommend. And, like you said about calling, sometimes, we overlook some of the old school ways of seeking business.
Right. Yeah, and it's just, when it's a so like in mortgage, in 2020, I flew into Vegas and for a conference on a Sunday night, and I'm looking at Twitter, and I'm like, oh, the market's gonna drop tomorrow.
Hmm.
And I made so much money in Vegas sitting in my hotel room. I was able to, yeah, I'm not a huge gambler by any stretch of the imagination, and I was able to throw $2,000 away and not sweat it, right? Because
Right, right, right.
all I did was just call people and refinance, right? And I
Yep.
picked up the phone, I dialed for dollars,
Oh yeah.
and sat in the hotel room and just did that,
Yeah.
right?
No, it's a numbers game.
Yeah, yes. So it's just, when you do that, and I guess what I was getting at is that it became really easy, and like
Hmm.
everybody was calling me now, and like,
Right.
holy cow, we got to jump on this
Yes.
refi, right? So easy. And what I did when I saw it starting to slow down, and number one, my own sphere, because
Sure.
I'd only been in the industry about 6 years, but the first 2 years were decent years,
Right.
but it wasn't like I lit them on fire the first 2 years.
Well,
And then,
people
but
learn.
now I'm getting, yeah, now I have this, but I'm like, okay, I got to go get some buyers.
Hmm.
And so when my purchase business, I focused on purchasing
Yeah,
in 2021, and that really helped my 2022,
of course.
and of course in 2023 and so forth, because
Absolutely.
I switched from, hey, just trying to get everybody refied to purchase.
Yep,
And when I did that, that made such a difference.
it does.
And so,
It's just kind of laying the groundwork, um, and it does trickle over.
right.
That's
And
what I've seen.
yeah, setting yourself up, because I mean, there's so many people that got into the mortgage because it was so easy
Of
at that
course,
time,
of
right?
course.
And then those people are like,
Yeah,
well, I
no doubt
can't, they
those.
have no idea how to do purchase business,
Right,
right? They don't have those relationships with the
right,
real estate agents.
right.
So,
And I mean, we're both in the industry of, it's a relationship based business.
100%.
And you get to a certain point with your experience, um, and my experience that I think why we work well together or we clicked is because we just don't have the time or the energy. We just are too
Right.
transparent.
Right.
Like, okay, here's the deal. Here's the deal. What can we do?
Exactly.
And so I think that building relationships like that,
Hmm.
they always pay off.
Yeah. I mean, being in sales my whole career
Yeah.
is, I've always been, whether it was in finance or car sales. I started in car sales and I did auto finance,
Yeah.
and I never wanted to be that used car guy, right? And I
Right.
wanted,
Right.
or that finance manager,
Right.
right?
Right.
And pack payments. I mean, I've seen it plenty,
I'm sure.
happen in that industry. And I've seen people that got not at my delership per se, but at other dealerships I
Yeah.
saw like, oh, they're going to jail,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
but what I always did, what I always focused on is always, you know, communication number one.
Of
So
course.
like I try to, we got our personal life, so we got to block off times
Right.
for our personal and whatnot. But
Absolutely.
at least just getting back to say, hey, I'll call you in a couple hours, or
Absolutely.
having the voicemail that says, hey, I'll answer after 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock
Right.
or whatever it is. I'll return some of these calls.
Just
So
a boundary or where
yeah,
people know what to expect. And
yes,
some of the greatest compliments I've got from other agents, is that, you always pick up the phone or at least get back to us
right,
with, I will call you back. I'm in the middle of this.
right,
Because there's nothing worse than, reaching out to somebody and then not hearing, they're just, they're off the grid. So
right.
communication is huge. in both of our
Right.
businesses.
Yeah, and I learned early on too is like, okay, so we're closing 30 days, right? And then we got this going on. Okay, we got a 10-day inspection or something.
Right.
And then so we're waiting for the appraisal, and then we're doing this. All of
Right.
a sudden there's an issue on the appraisal. Now we get some, things going back and forth. And now I've really been intentional, like, okay, when we're sending out with my assistant, like we're sending out,
Right.
here's the timelines. We need
Yep.
people to have this stuff back to us by this date. Because a lot of times it's just like,
It just
oh, we don't have the
falls by the
seller
wayside.
signature yet.
Sure.
And like, well, every day we lose because there's so much on my back end that
Yeah.
I got to do. It's
Yeah.
got to go through all these hands.
Of
It's just
course.
like, I don't just hand it to an underwriter that says clear to close.
Right. I know this. I know.
So it's fun.
No.
Um,
No, it's
so
been great.
so,
Um,
so back to when you're dealing with like the seller. So when you do a lot of investors,
yeah.
so you probably have staging companies that come in
Yeah.
like
And, there's staging companies, all over the Twin Cities.
mhm,
I personally use Revamp It Staging.
okay.
She's been in business. Not one person, but she's one point of like a contact. Like she always answers her phone or sends me a message, and she's great on, communicating. She not only, so I can sell houses, but I can't stage them. I legit am like a frat boy, like with a pool
Is that the
table.
D1
That's
athlete
the
in you?
D1 athlete in me, just put a keg stand, a keg
Right?
stand. Yeah, I'll do a keg stand in the corner and get
Hey, I partied at
the
UW and like that. I know what it's like there.
put the pool table in the living room. So I don't have well, I don't have that vision.
Mhm.
And I feel that a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers, truth be told, and a lot of agents don't have that
Right,
quality.
right.
And so she has come through in a lot of aspects, as far as, staging, vacant homes, obviously for my investment side, but even really helping my regular sellers on my other listings. She, for a consultation fee, will come in and use essentially the decorations that they
That
have.
they have, but
Right. So they don't, we do
declutter,
declutter.
change
We
the things.
just,
Right,
I think just as a human race, we, just kind of get in our own
right,
mode. We have tunnel vision.
right.
Even, buyers, she will, go out and say, hey, what are you looking at doing? So, it's a great business, that I highly, highly recommend,
Yeah.
on the listing side, and even on the buying side, whether buyers are first-time home buyers or they're buying their forever home,
Hmm.
if they give her kind of a style, I need to use her.
Yeah.
I need to use her for my home
Yeah.
because I am kind of clueless in that regard. But she offers those services, or the company does, and I just think that is a huge, huge selling point, especially for a seller. And I just think it's a great avenue to
You'll
tap
have to
into.
share her information with
I will.
me, and we'll
I
put it on
will.
the podcast
Yeah.
here so that
Yeah.
people can reach
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah, her name is Michelle. Revamp It Staging. She's phenomenal.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Um, now with your so you also, so being a D1 athlete, playing different sports. So what else sports you had tennis?
Tennis, of course.
Yeah.
I ran track. I played
Yeah.
softball. I'm a basketball player, so
Yeah. The
um,
full gap.
I'm kind of all around. But tennis was my
Yeah.
niche.
So you said you coach too.
I do. So I've got two daughters and a son. So, the girls, I coach a little basketball, but mainly tennis with them.
Okay.
My son, I coach once in a while in basketball. My husband actually also is a Division 1 athlete. He's a baseball player. So,
It,
our kids are just destined to
you-
be,
yeah, they're
they
around
always have
it.
they always have a choice,
So
but they, feel a little pressure
how's
from
the
mom and dad.
how's the competition between?
Oh, it's terrible. It's absolutely, we can't even play Uno. We cannot
Right.
play
Oh
any,
no.
like, oh no, we're so competitive. It's
Yeah.
insane. In fact, our first date, he said, hey, let's go bowling. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm a
Right.
decent
Right.
bowler. I'm like,
Right. Right.
you're done.
Right.
So he completely annihilated me, and I was like livid, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
like the
Right.
guy, but I'm
Right.
mad at you. I don't
Right.
know you, but I like you, and I'm
Right.
mad at you.
Right.
Come to find out, he qualified for the PBA tour.
Oh my
And so he
gosh.
grew up
Right.
bowling, and I'm like, you could have told me that. So our second date was on the tennis court. So
Right.
we're just competitive. Um,
Let's play on my turf now, right?
exactly.
I mean, so he's a baseball player, so he can throw a 90-mile plus an hour fastball,
Correct.
throwing his
And so
bowl.
he's got this hook.
He's got this curve.
He's
Yeah.
like, why don't you hook it? I'm like,
I don't know
I
how
don't
to
know.
do
Like,
that.
I just would do this for fun. And, I wasn't
Right.
bad, but I mean, he's like legit, like, oh, don't you see the oil? I'm like, what are you talking? Like,
I don't see the way.
just
No.
order me another beer. Like,
Right, right.
no.
That's
But no, he's a great athlete, and he's coached our daughters, and he coaches our son. And so, we're just kind of an all-around athletic family,
right.
and we do enjoy it. But we are definitely a competitive family, to
It's
say the
gotta be
least.
fun.
So, yeah. No, we've been very blessed. And so yeah, sports is huge, and like I said, it's just kind of transferred over into, the type of person I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of like that adrenaline, and
Well,
facing challenges, that's kind of the adrenaline, and finding a solution, that's kind of my sport.
right.
That's my ace,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, being in this industry, you have to be problem solving all
You
the
do.
time, right? And whether it's sometimes it's just simply talking to clients and problem solving, like, hey, do you want to buy now or later, right?
Right. Exactly.
And I heard it the other day, and I say it all the time, and I probably said it numerous times on this podcast, is like, when's the best time to ever buy a home? 5 years ago?
Right.
Because it just
You can't
you
you
can't
can't go back.
you can't see what the market is going to do for sure, and you can look at it like, oh, we're going to plan this out right.
It doesn't always pan out that way.
No.
It's life.
Right.
And, it's funny when you start out in life, after graduating college or whatever the case may be, you have a specific plan. And then, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I thank God that plan didn't work out,
Right. Right.
and so, and that's just kind of the same thing with careers,
Right.
or with dealing with different people,
Hmm.
because I deal with that too. Sellers like, well, if I sell high, I'll buy high.
Right.
And, I don't have a crystal ball.
No.
Um, and
I mean, we could be in World War III someday, and it would be changes. Things are going to happen, right?
correct.
You
You
don't
just
know
have to
this.
roll with
You
it.
have to roll with it. Like,
Yes.
going back to 2008 when the crash happened, I had friends that could afford their home, and
Hmm.
they would let them go. You
Yep.
know, they just let them go. I'm like, why? Well, I'm on $80,000 underwater right now. I'm like, okay, but
Go the distance.
go with the distance,
Oh,
because 5 years later they were up 40 grand,
correct.
and then they would have had paid down their
Uh-huh.
mortgage, and now they're just
You make a great point, because, Arizona, I actually got my license around that time. And I mean,
right
Southwest got hit.
hammered.
I mean, really hit.
Right,
My husband and I built a house, and we were completely underwater,
right,
but we went the distance, because when we did move to Minnesota, and sold our house, we sold it for a nice profit. And it goes like that.
right,
But I think about half of our subdivision that we built in were all foreclosures. And it was insane, because people were like, same thing. I'm underwater, forget it. I'm gonna
right,
walk away.
right.
And had they kept on to it,
They had all this
they
equity
had
down the
all this
road,
equity.
right?
And
It's
that's essentially, really, like, as far as the investing side, I would do open houses, and of course, all of these, people from California, Canada, all this is where, people would come in, and it would be like a $600,000 house that was now like 300,
right,
and so that's when I kind of got a taste, like, okay, you know
right,
what? And
right,
somebody else picked up all of those homes at those.
right. And then they sat on them for a while,
Correct.
sold them,
Yep.
and like here they are today. And look at now I mean, Arizona's values are
Skyrocketed again.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, you have to go the distance, in
Yeah.
my opinion, and
Mhm.
you have to make the decision,
I mean,
for
if
what's
you
right
lose
for
your
your family.
job and you got no job, like,
Totally.
and you can't, like, what are you
Well,
gonna
there's
do?
different circumstances.
100%.
Absolutely.
But if you have the ability to go the distance and
Right.
make those payments and
Yes.
whatever else, it is what it is. So I get, there's lots of people that lost it because they truly lost it, right?
Right.
So I'm not trying to discount those
Oh,
people,
absolutely
but
not.
it's the ones that just let
that
them
just
go,
walked away.
right?
Yeah.
That added to the because every time
Absolutely.
they did that, guess what happens,
Yep.
right?
No, I totally agree with that. So, no,
Well,
it's been wonderful, working with you. And one thing I wanted to mention before I forget, as far as on the investor side, if other agents go down that avenue, investors don't always want to uh maybe give up all of their cash. And so on the lending side, and I know you can get any deal done.
right.
This I know because you've done it for me. Um,
Well, thank you.
so that's another avenue where, an investor can, essentially be referred to you.
Yeah.
Um, so before, and that was just something I meant to mention
Well,
prior.
that's awesome. With New American Funding, we added, I think in third and fourth quarter, we had like 90 new products.
Yeah,
So, obviously people think when they think of a mortgage, 30-year fixed mortgage,
right,
Freddie, Fannie,
right,
FHA, right?
right.
VA,
Conventional,
the,
yes,
the standard,
totally.
your standard
Yeah,
loans. But we added a ton of new products. And then we have our NAF cash program, where specifically that one's huge for your contingent buyers, right?
sure,
Because they need the money from this home to buy the new home,
right,
or they can't afford both.
right,
So, we get them approved NAF cash. There's a small fee, it's 1.9%. We just
sure,
tack it onto that. But usually those cash deals specifically coming to a spring market where a listing, you're like, hey, we got three, four, five offers. We're not taking a contingent offer on the sale of your home,
right.
even though likely you're gonna sell
You're
your home.
gonna
But
sell your home,
what if it doesn't sell? Something
right?
falls through because now you're adding
Absolutely.
another layer, right?
Correct.
So, we got that program, and that's, that like has a 60+% offer acceptance.
That's awesome.
And like last year, one of the ones was, I think it was listed at 475. We went in 495, and the top finance offer was like 520.
Yeah,
So they took 495
right.
because it was closing in 2 weeks,
Yeah,
3 weeks. We could close super fast,
yeah,
and they saved them. So the 1.9, they would have had to pay
of course.
525 maybe to
It's
get
a
it,
and
right? So
absolutely worth
they
it.
had instant equity
Yeah,
right off the bat. So
yeah, no, it's completely worth
so,
it.
I moved to this company a year ago. It took, a minute for me to get everything under my belt. Plus,
Sure,
now I'm a branch manager, so there's more
of
expectations, more
course,
things I gotta
of
do.
course.
Um, and like, oh my God, just bite off too much. I'm running a tech company, and like, I'm a
You can
non-technical founder.
you can handle it.
Yes.
You can handle it.
Yes.
I mean, you answered my call like during your Christmas party, so
Yeah.
so I
Hey,
mean, you
hey, we got it done.
we did,
That,
we did.
like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What do we need? It's like,
It's
oh
like,
gosh.
hey, by the way, but
No,
no, it's yeah, we totally got off topic here. I
right,
think lost
right,
my
right.
train of thought.
And biggest thing is or go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say you've got different options through, um, you know, on the lending side.
Yeah,
And so that's what I just at least I didn't want to forget mentioning that because like I said, there's some investors that are like, I'm spread out like 2 mil,
right.
cash wise. Like
I,
I'd like to maybe tap into
te-
this, especially if they're doing like a rehab
right.
type of deal and it's gonna be
Hmm.
a fast turnaround
Yeah,
time.
and we have a rehab specialist. So like I bring people in, I get the deal, and then I just hand it to
Sure.
somebody that knows exactly how to handle that loan,
Right.
right? Because there are a lot of, some of these loans are really labor intensive, right?
Very.
So, that's where we like, okay, this is what that's all that
Hmm.
person does. We have the broker side, the brokers, they just know how to upload, do all that stuff,
Absolutely.
get everything done for the
Yep.
broker. And that broker industry, that's, they got decimated too and cut a lot of staff. So they were getting, like again,
Overwhelmed.
they all of a sudden they get a bunch of deals in and they just cut up 20% of their workforce. And then you're like, oh, how come I'm not getting a call back? Well, now I know, right?
Right.
So that's part of the reason why I built this company, because, when we do start to scale back up, which we do, I think it's going to be 2025,
Hmm.
maybe the end of this year, maybe the middle of this year. I think it's going to be closer to the end where we really start to fly.
Right.
It's they can't hire all the people back,
No,
right?
you can't.
And it's like I got transaction over the weekend, and on Saturday, like, hey, we can get this. There's two other offers. We have to close them by February 1st. No problem.
No problem.
We'll get it done,
Right.
right? That's going to get hard
It will.
if
It will.
next year, because I think, well, both real estate, both mortgage
Yep.
operations, a lot of that stuff had to get, and you kind of got to get that purge,
You do.
and you got to keep the best of the best, and
Absolutely.
and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We truly are. So it's, I had one guy at one of my coaching events. I think he was Churchill Mortgage in the Southwest, and he's like, yeah, if whoever can make it through 2024, they're 2025 and 2026 are probably going to be the best years of their life.
Perfect.
You know,
Well, hey,
Hey,
I
that's
take
where
care
I'm
of
at.
that.
Like, let's do it,
Let's
right?
go.
Let's roll. Um, but anyway, Holly, I appreciate you coming on. This is
Absolutely.
a fun
Thank you
discussion.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to see you, and it's been phenomenal to work with you on all of our deals,
Well,
and
thank
we're
you.
going to have quite a bit more.
And I can reciprocate that as well because it's been fantastic. I look forward to working with you in the future.
Of course.
And I hope any of you out there are, if you're interested in talking, if you're an investor, or if you're an agent, anybody out there that you have any questions for Holly, her information will be in our podcast here. Like and subscribe below. But thank you, Holly.
Thank
And
you for
thank
having
you.
me.
Absolutely.